Hello, it's nice to see a nice small crowd for a change. I call the May 25th, 2023 Plan Board to order. Mr. Castillo, would you call the roll?
Sure can.
I'm here.
Nicholas Hill,
Here.
Joshua Nate,
Here.
Jason Sanchez, Stephanie Sutton,
Here.
Renz Torres,
Here.
Tina Certain. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I forgot to turn my ears on. Give me 1 second.
My phone and my laptop.
Okay, could I have a motion? Let me see. I guess that you've dropped off the items that we bumbled on and will be on the 8th, right? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as it stands today before you?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Could we have, it passes unanimously, could I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Are there any comments from the public at this time about issues that are not on our agenda tonight?
They have to do it with the plan board?
Miss, I'm sorry?
They have to do it with the plan board?
No, just any comments you want. It's just open mic, you know. Try to be nice. We're not used to being abused like the city commission.
I could never do that. I'm the people's representative, I'm Donald Shepherd, the people's representative, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. We have a lot of things that are happening thus far in our city commission and in our planning of the city goes, and there's a lot of surveys that have been done in behalf of it, and I also wanted to mention that I'm a Republican, and what's going to happen is that they're coming down in the 17th of this coming month and just laying out the letter of intent, what they want the city to do and whatnot. And so that's one of the things. And so I applied for the mayor's position. And so I'm hoping and praying to God that I make that.
Wait.
be
You
mayor.
applied to become the mayor
Yes.
when the legislature removes the city commission?
Yes,
I see. Well,
yes.
we'll see if that works for
And I
you.
have my business card with me if you'd like.
No, I
but,
know you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have over 1,000 things for the first month that I am sworn in that I would like to get done. My agenda is that to make our city a better city, to pay off our bills that the city has, and I plan on doing that within 3 months. We have the revenue, we have the money to do transfers to do that, and I don't understand why the city's not doing that. Because that's what needs to be done so that the citizens don't have to worry about high utility bills, don't have to worry about what's being paid to the city and what's not. Can we take and get this by like new buses and new sidewalks and get our roads repaired? Those are things that are done. Also, I'd like to say that I'm put in an amendment to have our airport tower raised, and then the offices from the inner offices moved out underneath the tower offices. It'd be there, and that there frees up the whole office that is acquainted now to because they'll be over to the other office underneath the tower. It'd be so much more easier far as the radio tower, far as the landing and that. And we're going to take and get a deck from a boat that has the jet hangar clip that catches the planes as they come in and slows them down faster than what is normal. And then they, once they get to 20 feet, it drops off and they can taxi to the maintenance thing. And then once they come out of the maintenance shed, then they get to take and do that.
Mr. Shepherd, your 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
You,
Anybody else want to comment on issues not on our agenda tonight? Seeing none, we will go to the business at hand. Mr. Castillo, if you would read the first item.
First item on the agenda, AI 230410, Land Development Code Lighting Standard Amendment. This is a request to change outdoor lighting standards in the Land Development Code.
Good evening. I'm Chase Knight, Supervising Engineer with the Public Works Department. I'm going to be talking about some proposed lighting standard updates for the Land Development Code, Section 30-612. And this item is related to strategic goal number 3, I believe, of Gainesville being a great place to live and experience. So I'll start with just a little backdrop on the timeline for these revisions. So we did have a phase 1, which resulted in some recent revisions to the code, and those added pedestrian lighting standards based on, primarily based on FDOT requirements. At the same time, staff engaged with a consultant to perform a more in-depth lighting study to be able to come up with some requirements that were more city-specific. So we had considerations specific to Gainesville in mind. So that is phase 2, and we've completed that study and are now prepared to make those recommendations based on the results of the study. And the key components of the study included modeling and analyzing lighting using representative typical sections based on the city's transect zones. So again, the goal here was to determine lighting levels that are actually achievable using available GRU standards or GRU fixtures that are in their standards, as well as looking at how the lights interact, considering the city's tree requirements. So I'm going to be showing you just an example of what the analysis looked like for the study, but first I'll just kind of give a brief synopsis of some of the terminology. So illuminance is the density of light on a surface. A foot candle is a unit that we use to measure illuminance. So if you see a higher value for a foot candle or illuminance, it means there's more dense lighting. And then we have the uniformity ratio, which could either be written as an average divided by a minimum or a maximum divided by a minimum. And in some cases, both are used for requirements. So for the uniformity ratio, if you have a lower value, then it means the lighting is more uniform. So for example, in an ideal case, if you have a 1-to-1 ratio, the lighting is very uniform and it's hard to tell differences between dark spots and brighter spots. Whereas if you go to a higher ratio, let's say 20-to-1, then you start seeing some areas that appear brighter, and then you have dark spots, which may not be desirable in some cases. So here is that example analysis, and I'll show you what the urban typical section analysis looked like. This section includes mixed use and commercial developments with high pedestrian activity. And some of the things you might see there are dining areas and or building entrances within the private zone. And there's a 3D rendering of what we're talking about in terms of that section. So we have our travel lanes, on-street parking, the landscape zone, which is typically where the lighting fixtures are, sidewalk zone, and then the private zone. So this diagram represents what the lighting analysis software provides. And in this case, again, we're looking at the urban typical section. So it's that same section that was on that 3D rendering, but now you're looking at it from top down. So it's a plan view. And each dot here, all right, let me do it right here. So each dot here is a lighting fixture. In this case, they're spaced at 70 feet, and this is a variable that you could change in the software. And the fixtures represented in this particular case are those, we call them acorn lights, and you'll typically see them around the downtown area for pedestrian lighting. So here, the lines that you see in radiating around each fixture is pretty much the lighting distribution. So it kind of graphically depicts where the light is shining. And in this case, the software is able to provide an average illuminance, which here is 2.34, and then it gives you the ratios as well. So this type of analysis was carried out for the representative typical sections. And then we get to the meat of the matter, which is this table summarizing what the proposed revisions are in terms of lighting levels. And we've grouped them into two transit zone groupings. And so we have the revisions to the pedestrian lighting levels that we're proposing, and we're also adding requirements for roadway lighting. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. Any questions? Ms. Sutton?
I just have one. Is this a sign that Public Works is going to start reviewing photometric plans in place of sometimes planning has commented on that versus other departments? The police department has commented on that in the past. Like, is Public Works kind of taking ownership of photometric plans and review with these new standards?
Good evening, Brian Singleton, City Engineer, Public Works Director. We will be reviewing the photometrics in the right-of-way. So our engineers will focus on the lighting levels for the public realm, the sustainable development, GPD, if they're still involved, will look at the lighting on sites.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? I guess I have one question is it possible for us to add a requirement that, particularly in the case of special use permits where large buildings are being built, to add lighting that's attached to the building? And I think I've had an awful lot of people talk to me about the lack of pedestrian lighting around a lot of the tall buildings, which also happen to be pedestrian intense areas. And specifically, it's been pointed out on some of the buildings. I can't remember the name of the building that the old swamp is in, but a lot of the, particularly the side streets that go along there are pretty poorly lit.
So the original lighting standards were adopted as a kind of stopgap measure to address that. The original lighting ordinance did not have any requirements for lighting the public rights-of-ways or the alleys. It actually had a prohibition for light trespass outside of the property boundaries. So the original ordinance was adopted to address that for any developments that were coming in while we were working on finalizing the study. So this will address that moving forward. We will work with the applicants if they are interested in putting light packs on their walls. The only concern with that is as properties change hands, or if one goes under, or at the end of the life of a building, the building could go dark and then you would not have that lighting anymore. So we're most of the time going to encourage to use for the pedestrian realm and the roadway lighting to not put it on the buildings, but there might be specific situations where we would work with somebody to have the light packs on the walls.
Okay. I'm not really concerned about a new building going dark in my lifetime, because I'm an old guy. Okay, that's an interesting problem. Is it possible for the lights in the, currently on the right-of-way to be a light that hangs over the pedestrian realm?
So there are fixtures in the catalog and GRU's catalog that are more Cobra head style, and there are the Acorn style lights. I mean, if you look at, I think South Main,
Right.
it has some poles with dual heads on it.
Right.
The higher ones that are over the roadway, and then reverse side,
And
the
that's
Cobra
what I
heads
was
on
really
the
thinking about,
backside.
is trying to make sure that as we develop, a denser city, that the pedestrian realm is it doesn't have to be lit like some kind of penitentiary yard, but it needs to be lit so that people feel comfortable walking, and the visibility is good.
Right, and that's the intent of what we're trying to address here. And we are working with GRU to make sure we have enough options in that lighting catalog to give some flexibility on how the lighting is
Okay.
provided.
I'm thinking more, we get a lot of special use permits requests for large buildings. And obviously, we have some ability to add requirements as part of the special use permit, over and above what's required. And I'm interested in trying to make sure that we have adequate lighting for those, but it sounds like you think we can do that on public right of way.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Edelton on the special use permit side of things. As far as increasing lighting levels, when it comes to the public realm, we don't want to light too much.
Right.
For one reason is for the driver. If you have your sidewalks lit too high and your roadway is a lot darker, your eyes are not going to be able to see clearly.
I would like them to be at least as well lit as the roadways are.
Right. And then there's situations where you can, if you have a pedestrian crossing the road, you could lose them in the way the lighting, it's hard for me to explain, but the way the backlighting and the front lighting happens, somebody could go dark, and we want to be very conscientious of how we're doing the photometrics. But the pedestrian realm lighting criteria is a higher lighting criteria than the roadway.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
I can add to that if that's the right time.
I'm sorry, Mr. Edelton.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not paying attention to my,
don't pay attention
buttons.
to me, that's perfectly fine. I work better that way. Just to add to the questions about the special use permits, you're right, that gives the plan board an opportunity in those special use permit requests. For one, staff, of course, will come to you all and present what the code language is and what staff believes is the best lighting levels for these areas. But if the plan board, in your review of these special use requests, can identify specific needs for additional lighting in additional areas that maybe the code had not contemplated, that is exactly the right time to point those out and say, hey, the code may not have thought of it, but in your special use request, what about, a wall pack here? And that is a highly appropriate place. Just because I'd kind of like the opportunity to try to talk about the uniformity and the light, and I think what Director Singleton was trying to communicate for the light and especially the pedestrians. The way I sort of think about it is, as an old black and white film noir, detective movie
Right.
that has the cone of light that comes down from the street light that, has the guy in the trench coat smoking a cigarette, but you can't see anything outside that cone. And a pedestrian that walks into and out of that is really hard to see if you're driving or doing anything else. So the uniformity is what addresses that cone of light issue and makes it so that there's not, that space for a singular figure to walk into and out of a lighted area.
Okay.
That's the way I think of it. Hopefully that's helpful to some people, but yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, did you?
I just have one more question.
Yep, go to it.
I was just curious if you all had coordinated with DOT at all for the DOT roadways that come through the city? Where it may actually be their right of way?
We have not coordinated explicitly with the DOT regarding the study in these levels. The DOT does not have a lighting requirement. So basically, how the DOT does their lighting is they essentially accept what the local agencies have. We actually have a state highway lighting agreement where they pay us to maintain their lights. So as long as it's produced, as long as the photometrics produced are consistent with their manuals, they don't really have concerns with what's moving forward and what we're proposing.
Okay. It might just be helpful to give them a heads up that this is changing, particularly, you were saying Public Works is going to start reviewing within city right-of-ways, but in the case that the right-of-way is DOT right-of-way, is Public Works still reviewing that? Or we're just counting on the photometric engineer doing the right design in those cases? Because do you see what I'm saying?
Understood. So
Okay.
we would still review when we get an application, there's work proposed in the county or the FDOT right away. We're
Yeah.
still reviewing it for
Yeah.
consistency. Ultimately, if the work requires a permit from FDOT, which a lot of the work still does require a permit from FDOT, they would review it as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I think some of the primary roadways that we're probably thinking of in our minds,
13th Street.
13th Street, University Avenue, are DOT controlled. So I just want to be sure that we have that covered and we aren't applying something or, creating something that isn't going to apply on these streets that we all have in our heads that need help, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it sounds like you're going to be sure that this applies on those DOT roadways as well in the city.
These criteria are consistent with the FDOT criteria, but they are applicable to city streets. So we can't regulate the FDOT streets. But we will work with FDOT to ensure that the lighting levels are what we would like to see for our community.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Open the public hearing. Any comments on this proposed change to the lighting ordinances? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for comments or a motion.
You gonna do it, Nick? Mister, I'm gonna make motions today.
Yeah, I'll make a motion for approval. Make a motion to approve AI 230410, lighting standard amendment to the land development code.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to our next item, Mr. Castillo.
Next item, LD 23-000054, text change amendment to non-conforming lot requirements, as well as RSF4. And this petition is a request to change the non-conforming lot criteria by removing language that requires lots to not be a substandard lot. It's not here, but this will also address RSF4 setbacks as well as encroachment
Right.
into the setback, front setback for porches. And I'll be the one presenting, so I'm gonna go
Yes,
forward to.
thank you.
For the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you today is a privately initiated request to amend our text in order to reduce side setbacks in properties located within RSF4 zones and allow front porches to encroach on the front setback, as well as amend the substandard definition found within our code. So as far as the setback is concerned, this is the request before you. There are two parts to the request. There's the amendment to side setbacks, which currently in RSF4, side setbacks are 7.5 for sides that are internal, as well as 7.5 for sides that are facing the street. The request is to reduce that to 5 feet. And there's also a request, if you notice here, the number 5 on top of the 20, as opposed to number 4, or the additional 5, should I say? That will pertain to a small description at the bottom of the table, which in essence describes the allowance for an encroachment to occur within the front setback of properties within RSF4, allowing for front porches. As far as the non-conforming lot definition, currently the proposal is to eliminate item number 1 within non-conforming lots. That basically requires that a lot be not a substandard lot when being determined to be legal conforming. This, for your reference, is the definition of a substandard lot. In essence, it's a lot that is really small, whether we're looking at the square feet criteria or whether we're looking at a lot that is 80% of the minimum required lot area, or if it has a width that is less than 50% of the minimum lot size requirement. Staff has analyzed the request before you and has found that it meets our comprehensive plan as well as our criteria for text amendments. This is just an example of some of the items that are addressed within our comprehensive plan that directly speak to this request. The full list, however, is found in the report and in your backups. Just to clarify a few points, this will not increase the density in RSF4. This also will not amend any uses within RSF4. This will not affect existing developments in a negative fashion. Any conforming development will remain conforming. However, some developments that are currently non-conforming, there's a potential for them to actually be conforming with this. This also will allow more flexibility for single homes in RSF4 to be built, as well as facilitate the development of currently vacant lots. And with that, I say thank you, and I am available for any questions that you may have. The applicant is also here, and I believe he has a presentation to give you.
First questions for Mr. Castillo. Ms. Sutton?
So I have a couple questions, and you may be better to answer, or the applicant may be better. One question that I have, probably more for you, is where else in the code we refer to a substandard lot, because we're kind of altering that definition somewhat here, and so I'm curious at other places where that's referred to. And then this seems to focus, and this applicant has a particular interest in a specific neighborhood, it appears. And so another question I have is, did we think about maybe just looking at this neighborhood that's maybe an area of interest and rezoning that neighborhood? I mean, we've talked about when we went through the whole transect zoning, we kind of pulled back on U1 and U2 because we've pulled back on changing neighborhoods a lot. But if there's a particular neighborhood where it makes sense, like I am in support of looking at areas of the city where it makes sense to change. And this may be a neighborhood that it just makes sense to look at as a different zoning category rather than changing our definitions and things. I think I think more changes are actually needed to the general table with setbacks and things, and so I don't really like just changing the side setbacks on RSF4 and letting the rest of it go. I don't like that, and I wonder if a better solution, if it's a kind of specific neighborhood problem here, is looking at a different zoning category that would make more sense. So I don't know if that was part of your conversation with the applicant, but I also am kind of worried about, like, are there unintended consequences of these changes to the substandard lot definition that we aren't thinking about?
Sure. So as far as the definition of substandards, the primary area where this is found is what I've just shown you. There's really, at least none that I've found, any other areas that would be negatively impacted by this code amendment. RSF4 and any specific neighborhood that was not discussed. I'm not aware of a very specific neighborhood. The applicant did show some examples within his submittal, so maybe the applicant can come in and talk more about that. But
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, anybody else? My only question is, I'm assuming, and you always get in trouble when you do this, is that non-standard lots are primarily going to be concentrated in older subdivisions.
correct.
So stuff that's outside, outside the original urban core, probably most of the lot sizes are pretty standard at that point. Is that an accurate assumption?
Yes, that would be.
Okay, so we're really looking at stuff that's downtown, the old neighborhoods that all kinds of stuff went on because it was before we really had a lot of regulations.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Let me ask Mr. Edelton.
Yeah, I was just going to add a little bit to that. You're absolutely right that where we see this happen the most is in these older neighborhoods and in the neighborhoods that are proportionately minority neighborhoods in the city. And what we've been seeing on the planning side is that these are vacant lots and they have been vacant for a long time, and that it is this application of this section of the code really that largely has kept them vacant. And from the planning side, the direction that we've received, of course, from our community and our commission is to try to look for ways to increase opportunities for housing. And really, staff's opinion on this is that for those lots in a very specific set of locations, that this helps facilitate additional housing.
And so basically, it also increases infill.
Yes.
Some of our most downtown urban neighborhoods
Yes.
would be candidates for more infill.
And one of the questions we asked ourselves as well as planning staff, just as a more of an academic question, but obviously in this case with real world outcomes, is why is there a substandard lot provision? What is it for? Why did we create it in the first place? And we have some answers to that. We don't have a lot of good actual data that we can tie to, at least at this point, from the city's process and specifics. But that is some of the questions that we asked ourselves. What both of the questions, why is it there in the first place? Is it providing a benefit to the city? And what would happen if we changed it? And what are the benefit changes if there are?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Coffey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andy Coffey. I just have a few things to add, and I would like to use the overhead, but I don't have a presentation.
There you go.
Thank you. That was very prompt. I'd first just like to preface my comments with some data that I prepared, some charts and data. This reflects the cost of a 1,500 square foot home in the city of Gainesville over the last 3 years. If you were to purchase a 1,500 square foot home in the year 2020 at the average price per square foot in the city of Gainesville, you would have paid $213,000. And if you finance that purchase, 80% of it, with a mortgage at the average interest rate at the time, your mortgage rate would be $719. Today, if you buy a 1,500 square foot house at the average price per square foot, you will pay $319,500. And if you finance 80% of it at the average interest rate today, your mortgage payment is $1,000 a month higher. And I know the city has undertaken efforts recently to address this trend and has had mixed success so far. Those processes take a long time, as we all know. And most recently, the current city commission has indicated that they would like to pursue incremental changes to address this this pattern. So I've submitted a text amendment application that's before you tonight to make it possible to build smaller homes on existing platted lots. And I'd just like to add a few things to what was presented. One, I just wanted to point out that with respect to the substandard lots, what we are doing is changing the criteria for when lots are deemed conforming. And what will remain applicable criteria are the standards that ensure lots will only be deemed conforming if they are consistent with existing development patterns. And how that's accomplished is this criteria that says the lot must be located within 500 feet of two other lots. So it's a small area, there must be two other lots that are developed with a principal structure and share a substantially similar degree of the same nonconformity. So only where those conditions are present would you be able to build on such a lot. And then I would just like to show you how this applies to an area that is of specific concern to me. This is the historic development pattern that occurred where lots have been platted that are 25 feet wide. And these two graphics illustrate what could be built on a parcel that consists of 3 platted lots. Today, you could build one large 2,900 square foot home. That's a home that's actually been constructed in an infill neighborhood. You could build one single family home with 2 accessory dwelling units, neither of which could be sold to homeowners. These are units that have actually been developed in an infill neighborhood. And with the proposed modifications to the code, you could instead build the same square footage as those previous illustrations in a format that can be sold to individually to homeowners at a more affordable price point. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Questions for Mr. Coffey from the board? Seeing none?
Can you address my question about whether you looked at just going to like an RC zoning or a different category? I mean, I realize that would kind of have to be a suggestion of city staff. You obviously don't own
Yeah,
a
Mr. Chair,
neighborhood worth
if I
of
own the
parcels.
entire neighborhood, that's what I would pursue, but I don't. And also, the modest setback change that I've proposed accomplishes a few things. One, it allows you to site plan around existing trees, gives you more flexibility to do that. It allows you to construct a 1-story floor plan instead of being restricted to a narrower buildable area that forces a more expensive 2-story floor plan. And it also creates the opportunity to locate parking adjacent to a building on the lot, as opposed to having parking essentially effectively required in front of the house. So you get makes possible a better development pattern. But to answer your question directly, I don't own the entire neighborhood.
Yeah. No,
That's not feasible.
I think it sort of bothers me because, in my time on the board, we've had these discussions about making changes to neighborhoods at least 3 times in a significant way. And the community's gotten upset about it, and we have scaled things back each time and said, hey, we're not going to do this to all the single family areas, or even all the single family areas adjacent to transects. We're going to take you out. You aren't going to be a U1 or a U2. And each of those times, I feel like the board has sort of given some direction that, like, why don't we find places in the city where it makes sense? Okay, we're not going to whole scale change everybody's single family zoning, and I was always against that, but I do think that there are pockets where it makes sense, and there are parts of the city where it makes sense, and this appears to be one. And so I would like for our planning department to be thinking progressively about, like, finding these pockets. You shouldn't have to bring this text amendment to us, I guess is what I'm saying. And we
Mr.
should
Chair.
have, because we've been having these conversations for a decade, I would hope that we could think about it in a comprehensive zoning way that we've tried, whole scale. Like this is a perfect example of a place where we should be doing a rezoning rather than changing just, an RSF4 column, because this isn't a comprehensive solution. I mean, we're not looking at the other RSF categories. We're not looking, but maybe this is a setting where this should be, something similar to the neighborhood residential that was proposed, or similar to RC, which is, more like that, and also in some of these more, similar character neighborhoods. So I think, we've tried to have these holistic discussions. This is a perfect example of how we could break that down a little bit and take an area of the city where it makes sense and show people, like, this is what'll happen. That's what we need to do. To make any of this successful, we have to find areas of the city like this, do the zoning change, and show people this is what happens when you do it. And so I support what you're doing here, but I think that we need more. And when I look at this, I think this whole neighborhood needs to be rezoned to RC. And I think, I don't know, I'm frustrated with this process, as I know you are, because you've come to us, previous meetings. I know you're frustrated with this process too. So I would like, I think you're going to move this forward and do what you need to do for your projects. I would like for staff to think a little bit about other pockets of the city like this, and maybe bring them back to us and say, hey, we want to look at doing these 5 parts of the city as U1 or U2 or U3 or RC, because these neighborhoods have similar issues to what, was brought before you, and that's a better solution than just coming in and changing a couple things for RSF4 and not addressing the other single family categories. So I'm sorry to rant a little bit, but every time we try to do something, we scale it back, and I've been asking for something like this, like a part of the city that we can do this rezoning. This is a perfect example. We're not doing it, and that, I think, is the better solution. But that's not against you, and I'm not against what you're doing here tonight. I just think we need to look at this, and we need to show the city what happens if you change a neighborhood, and that it's not going to blow up.
Well, and we've run into a buzzsaw every time we've tried to do that.
Because we're trying to do the whole city
And,
at once.
well, if we start picking neighborhoods, on the other hand, this is a little incremental move that will basically allow you to test out a possible new zoning district without, we could say this worked okay, let's do this somewhere else. But it is a really small incremental change, which theoretically is what we're all aiming for these days. So anyway, I do support this, but there's got some more comments.
If
Yeah,
I
go
can
ahead.
just say one more thing, I just think not all the neighborhoods like this are gonna be RSF4, right? Like, there are a variety of zonings. Some of them are RC, some of them might be RMF5. Like, some of the neighborhoods with this character, they have different zoning categories. And I want staff to think about other parts of the city that maybe this single little text amendment, changing a couple numbers here and there, isn't gonna solve the problem. And like, let's look at it proactively from a bigger city perspective and think about trying some of these zoning categories that we've gotten resistance on before. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Mr. Hill,
Mr. Chair, I have a brief comment whenever.
I'm sorry, you want to respond?
I just wanted to point out that an advantage that I see to incremental change is it allows this type of analysis where you can look at how this change will affect a specific parcel.
Yeah, it's about as incremental as you can do.
It is 2.5 feet, sir.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would just like to say to the applicant, thank you for bringing this forward. I just think it's great that, the private sector as well is looking at infill opportunities and looking how our code can be amenable to that, especially at a time like now where we need to start thinking about more creative solutions to infill and incentivizing that more. I think that's wonderful. To Stephanie's comment earlier, I think that's interesting go to a neighborhood approach. In staff's, all the engagement that you did for the recent housing amendments that we tried to pass through, has there seemed to be any neighborhoods in any of your public engagement that where the residents willingly talked about upzoning their own property? Single-family neighborhoods, at least historic single-family neighborhoods, I think there's a few residents that probably would not like that, even if it was for the right thing to do, even if it was the good planning decision, even if it would increase the property values of their homes, they just would not want to increase entitlements. So I just want to know, was that ever investigated? Have we ever went to the neighborhoods and asked them, how would you like to be up zoned?
I have a multi-part answer to that,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Well, we'll just call on you now anyway, because
Yeah.
you're blinking away.
Yes, you get to a point that really was starting to be brought up, is really process. Yes, one way is that individual property owners can come and request land use and zoning changes. The other way is that the city can suggest it. When the city suggests it, of course, it applies to a bunch of property owners that may not have suggested it or have thought that that was desirable. So that is its own process, of course. It would be planning staff presenting that, creating a report on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis to say why one neighborhood should be zoned differently than another, which we can do, and that may make sense, absolutely. But it is its own process. To date, in the conversations that we have had about single-family zoning and rezoning changes, individual neighborhoods saying that yes, they wanted to be upzoned. That conversation hasn't, really happened, and probably, in a truthfully honest way, that question was probably not presented in a way that neighborhoods one-off would be able to answer. But in a long-winded answer, no, we don't normally see neighborhoods, coming to the planning department saying, please rezone my entire neighborhood to have more density. Just to speak to some of the questions about what staff has thought of is, I just want to try to assure the plan board that staff has thought of that. It is something that we think is very important, and we have, because you all brought it up, and of course our citizens have brought it up as well, thought about this exact, planning question. That is it valuable to do one-off neighborhood by neighborhood changes to areas, or is it comprehensive planning to approach this in a citywide, code-wide way? And in some cases, we get results that are desirable by our commission and our neighbors doing it one way, and in some cases another. That's exactly what we're coming here to you all tonight to give us your opinions on, in this case and this proposal. Is it a comprehensive planning approach here that is desirable, or is it a neighborhood by neighborhood approach here that is more appropriate?
Ms.
So,
Sutton?
so I would just say, what's interesting about this is, Mr. Coffey's avoiding having to change your minimum lot size and your minimum lot width because you're sort of already, non-conforming lots. So like, that is a significant difference, whereas, most of the RSF4 neighborhoods aren't gonna have these existing lots that sort of don't meet those standards, right? This is only gonna really apply in those certain neighborhoods that have the substandard lots, essentially. That are gonna be able to change the layout in a significant way, because if you were creating a new neighborhood with RSF4, you would still have to have the same lot width and lot depth and lot area, right? But the lots that you're redeveloping don't meet those standards, which is why we're getting the finished product that you're showing us. That wouldn't necessarily, like, those lot widths wouldn't necessarily work if it wasn't a substandard lot, right? You're picking up lots that are already not meeting some of the criteria, it seems.
Mr. Chair, those are existing platted lots that were platted 100 years ago. And that, I agree, is often the case in older neighborhoods.
Yeah, so it doesn't give us the finished product that you're gonna be able to demonstrate in a new RSF4 neighborhood, I think is my point. Like, we're solving this problem in one area with these old lots, but it's not gonna, because of the lot width and depth and area requirements, you aren't gonna get three, that close together in a new neighborhood meeting all the other standards. It's just,
Unless we change the criteria.
unless we change, yes, unless we do a more significant change,
Right.
I think is my point. Like, this,
But that doesn't mean we should hold up working with non-conforming lots that's proposed now. It just means that we probably ought to go
that we
further.
need to look further if we really, this isn't gonna, it's gonna solve the problem on the non-conforming substandard lots. But it's not gonna create the same finished product in all RSF4
Correct.
areas, I think is my point.
Okay, we got it.
Mr. Chair, I would agree that it will accomplish something.
Yeah, thank you. We do too. Mr. Edelton, did you have something else? You're done? Anything else from the board? Mr. Torres?
So Stephanie, I guess what would you prefer tonight? Would you prefer we just like go through with this like motion now and then like come back to it later and like propose a rezone of a certain neighborhood? Like,
So I don't want to hold Mr. Coffey up anymore, and I think, I think passing this along, but I think, even when I look at this, I think, planning should have recommended taking this to RC, right? Because then you would have a smaller lot width and depth and area requirement too, right? So your lots may not even be, I don't know the details of these lots, but they may meet those, not be substandard if they're RC zoning. That may or may not be the case. So in my mind, we're fixing this for your substandard lots, and that's great. It's gonna let, us create some additional housing, but it's not the right solution. It's solving your problem, but it's not solving the city's problem.
Or one little teeny piece of the
Yeah,
city's problem.
yeah.
Because I think affordable housing is fundamentally incremental. A little here, a little there.
So I don't oppose what you're trying to do. I just think we need to look at it in a bigger picture way. Like, you know, and clearly this was privately initiated, but I would think, you know, staff could bring us something that shows us side setback changes in all the RSF zoning districts. You know, like there's more that can be done here without going to neighborhood residential everywhere. But this is like a super tiny step. I want like a medium step.
So we're not really yelling at you,
So
we're
no,
yelling at
it's not
Mr.
you.
Hamilton.
It's like planning. Let's think about this. Like, what's the like? I don't know. But
Okay, thank you.
that's it.
Anything else for Mr. Coffey? We're going to try to calm this something down for a few minutes.
Happy to answer any further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Did you say you wanted something?
No, I said I don't want to give them
Okay. We'll open it to the public hearing. Any comments on this proposal?
Thank you. I'm Sean Weber. Actually own like 12 lots in the exhibit that he showed in the Waits subdivision. And I've actually never met Andy Coffey or Mr. Coffey before, but we heard about this petition. So you kind of kept saying Mr. Coffey's problem. It's not just Mr. Coffey's problem. It's everybody that owns those lots' problems. We own them there, and we own some in the Duval neighborhood. So it's kind of spread out, you know. And we actually have 2 houses that fit on those 25-foot lots. One is in the Fifth Avenue district. And when we were working on the house, it would not be, not even an exaggeration, like 10 to 20 people a day would come and say how much they appreciated us working on the houses. And generally, it was the older Black population. So they would remember those houses from when they were kids, and they'd come back and say, you know, how much they enjoy seeing us work on them. So the good thing is the people in the neighborhoods, they like to see that style house new or, you know, remodeled, refurbished, and given new life. So I don't think people, you know, necessarily in the neighborhoods would be against these, you know, building on the 25-foot lots with a 15, or ours are about 16-foot wide, but, you know, generally that's what they were. And, you know, with that neighborhood that we have a couple that are in different areas. So even if we wanted to, you know, we can't put them together because we have different property owners on either side where houses have already been built. So now there's a 25-foot lot sitting there. And when we purchased them, we didn't know that they could potentially be not buildable. We just pictured building a little tiny house like you see throughout the neighborhood in the, you know, older neighborhoods. There's one in particular we like. It's very narrow and has a real high roof. And basically we want to recreate that house, you know, on one of our lots. So by at least passing this initial measure, it gives us the potential to build on those lots. And then, you know, I agree with looking at something else down the line to, you know, fix some broader issues. But that's pretty much what I wanted to say. You know, it's not just Mr. Coffey. It's going to affect other people in different neighborhoods too. So we hope that we can pass this and then look at something else for the future. And then just something I've noticed when people take 3 or 4 of the lots and put them together and build that giant 2,900 square foot house, the people that can afford those houses aren't from that neighborhood. You know, so now you've displaced people that lived in the neighborhood, and I couldn't afford to live in that house that's built there, you know, where if they were the smaller houses, they become more affordable to more people. So that, just a couple things that I've observed. So thank you for your time.
I guess effectively you're rebuilding the neighborhood in the style in which it was originally built.
Yeah, you know, because it's not uncommon for 20 people a day to come up and say how good it looks.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comment or a motion. Don't be shy.
I'll make a motion to approve let's see, LD 23-00054. And I also would like to encourage staff to bring us back recommendations that make some other changes to the code in this similar direction.
We have a motion to approve, and do we have a second?
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Good luck to you. Mr. Castillo.
Item number 2023-529, Member Joshua Nay, text amendment proposals. Proposed text amendments for discussion by city plan board members. Joshua Nay is wanting to speak to amending the alcohol distance from churches within the transit zone, amend uses within the transit zone, non-residential special zoning districts, and amend text for single room occupancy.
Why are you looking at me? You didn't say I had to make a presentation.
Well, go ahead and talk. You may as well get
I'll
used
talk
to
about it a little bit. So some of these, let's look at them. Let's look at the alcohol establishment. Some of this is like, in some of the housing that's being built like right across from the university, you can't build a bar there anymore. So that's just making it some of those U8 that are right north of the university. I don't even drink, but I just think it's good for walkability to have a place people can walk to, and it prevents drunk driving and that kind of stuff if you have a bar you can walk to. So that's
And
really that's
downtown,
what it is.
We've got to be starting to run out of places that are far enough away from, is that true? Seems like it.
We haven't analyzed it for the number
Okay.
of properties that would be affected by this.
Right.
We have seen in that Midtown area, for the churches that have been established, that changing, uses and tenants there is more challenging than other places. But for this particular one, we haven't looked to see how many specific properties would do that.
Okay. I just recall some years ago, a church, I think it was The Rock, put a small storefront
Downtown.
right downtown on Main Street, just a little bit south of University, and that was generating some hoo-ha because obviously there's lots of bars around there.
It was, a challenge at the time that use is no longer there. It's a bar.
No, I know it went away, but I remember
It
we.
switched to a bar, I think. The
Okay.
So we can talk about these one at a time. So
That's-
if really it's whether or not we want staff to look at it, work on it, and bring it back to us. So if you guys, I mean,
My view about, I've been in favor of changing the distance requirements. First of all, it's unclear to me why churches get special dispensation to be able to prevent certain kinds of businesses from being there. I mean,
I would think you'd want it next door because the next day you're like regretting stuff. You want to go to church.
or you can, you know where the sinners are. Anyway, but it strikes me as a really archaic thing from, 100 years ago, and I think we ought to consider reducing it. And I would appreciate if staff would analyze it and come back and talk to us about it.
And in as much as is possible, we can look into the history of why that separation language was put in there. In the
Oh,
first
we know
place.
why that is, so. yeah.
I figured that you did, but
Yeah.
if that's desirable, we can
Okay.
bring that too.
That'd be fine. But it also applies, I think it applies to schools.
Yes.
And now, there aren't a lot of urban schools. Most of our schools tend to be suburban and in residential neighborhoods, but,
And I believe some of those are tied in the state statutes, so we'll analyze that as well.
yeah, okay, thanks. Okay, any other comments about this? I mean, if you want to say, let's just ban alcohol and go back like the good old days when I first got.
I mean, I don't even drink, so.
I think that's an excellent idea to look at some of these standards. I mean, this is, from what I know, it's standard planning language from cities all over Florida, and it's old language.
Yeah, it's all over the country at some point.
That needs
yeah.
to be revisited.
Yeah.
You know, from old puritanical values that may not exist in today's modern society. So, yeah, I would like to revisit that if possible.
Okay,
The next is SROs. Now, I understand, did we approve SROs, was this 2017? And I don't think anything's been built, right?
Not for an SRO, not to my knowledge.
And this is just adding some flexibility in case anybody wants to buy it, to build something. So instead of having to have on-site people 24 hours a day, you have somebody on call. It says laundry facilities, kitchen facilities mentioned. I don't know how people feel about this one.
And this is another one where, of course, there's history of SROs in the city, and then there's not, and we could look into, and would be happy to look into the history of why the city decided that over time.
Yeah, and it also makes it so you can be a little bit further from a bus stop, which they were pretty close before.
well, arguably, SROs ought to be more welcome than they are. They were at one time.
Right.
And Mr. Hill. So.
Yeah, I actually was going to speak to the transportation element of that. I think it's a good idea. I can see what they were going for with the transportation, that SROs must be located within a half mile of a public transit stop. But in Gainesville, where micromobility is in a lot of areas now, is that half mile still really?
They said quarter mile. The original was quarter mile.
Right.
They straightened it out.
Right.
Now it's half mile.
I know it's more inclusive. I just wonder if it's really even necessary at all. It's good to have. It would be better if it was public transit stop, but micromobility, I mean, these scooters are all over.
Our code is clearly not, reflected the advent of micromobility. On the other hand, I rarely ever see, I'm on the board at Grace Marketplace, I rarely ever see any of our clients on micromobility.
Yeah, I guess I just had students in mind for this, but yeah, maybe some of the.
I think SROs would probably, it might be students, but it might be a whole other
Sure.
Group of folks, yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're thinking about taking the transportation element out completely?
Not necessarily. I just, I think conditions have changed since that was originally written in terms of what's available. But yeah, no, I agree that, not everyone uses micromobility. It's, people who are really, really struggling for every dollar might not have enough money or a phone to activate a micromobility scooter. So I get it.
Okay. On the other hand, we're moving towards the free market to regulate parking. If you're going to build an SRO, you might want to put it near transit. That's just, I don't know if we need to require that or not, but anyway.
For parking issues, just in general for uses, you're right, we're transitioning essentially to where if the use needs to show that it can contain the parking that is required. So if it is an SRO where their clientele uses micromobility and they can show that to planning staff as a part of a business model or business proposal, then we're willing to process that.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Nay?
Any questions from you guys? Or
It's just really funny because SROs kind of serve two distinct populations. You get people who are within like campus block, which is primarily like Grace clients and Section 8 voucher holders. And then you get like the places off Southwest 35th Place. They have like very different issues you have to deal with.
Mr. Torres, would you pull
Oh,
your
I'm
microphone
sorry.
out from behind? Just pull it out from behind your
Is that good?
laptop. Yeah, that, for deaf people like me, it helps.
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do you want me to repeat what I said?
No, I got it, but it's a struggle for.
Yeah, my bad. But yeah, I think we should keep the transit element in there at least, because like a lot of people, like I think of the people that come to my food pantry from Campus Walk, it's like hard for them to get here because it's like such a long walk and there's no direct bus routes from there to downtown Gainesville, which without, and a lot of them are disabled too, so it's like hard for them to get around.
even on like the micromobility scooters. But yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? You're busy absorbing all of this down there? Okay, I can tell.
I kind of like leaving the half mile in. I'm glad that you raised it, but I kind of like leaving that in just because I think that's where most of these are going to occur anyway. I mean, we have so many transit stops, and I do think that the population that's probably targeted with SROs is going to be a transit, dependent population in some cases. So I like leaving it in
Yeah,
and not totally.
Well, it was a quarter before. And that
Yeah, I like making it a half.
Okay.
Now this is the one that's going to be, I saw Stephanie circling everything because I was just having fun, like, well, I don't know, let's legalize go-karts.
Yeah, apparently you
Let's
want to have a little go-kart place in town.
Very
So-
vicious.
Some of this is like, I love libraries. I want to make libraries legal everywhere. Like, because I have a library across the street from my house, and like my kids love walking over there. I'd love to see like libraries in every,
Like, we're going to ban all the books in the library?
well, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get there. It's Florida.
That's on the record, right?
It's on
It's recorded.
videotape, yeah.
It's right there. I don't know how to go over this because there's so much stuff, but if you want to
Okay.
go over questions or if there's stuff you don't like, just say that stuff. I'm okay with, I'm flexible.
Yeah, we don't even care.
So
I do care. I'll be honest.
The ones that I sort of have some more reservations about are like kind of on the end of the first two tables. So the MD zoning, that's pretty much just where the hospitals are. Like, I don't think we have it a lot of other places in town.
Yep.
And I'm like a little cautious to put some of the residential uses and things like next to the hospitals. I mean, there just isn't a lot of MD zoning, and when I think of it, I think of like a, 10-story hospital, like, so things that are compatible with that. And then PS zoning is mostly publicly owned property, and so some of these things, I sort of had a lot of circles in those two columns for MD and PS, things
Can I
that I wasn't sure
talk to the
would
MD?
apply.
I actually work at the hospital. And so my thinking is, I mean, we have a lot of travel nurses and stuff. My thinking is maybe the hospital decides it wants to build some housing for these folks that are travel nurses and other kinds of nurses. And right now they can't do that. That was honestly just my thinking of that. Because again, I work at the hospital. I see the budget crunches. They're talking about their, the travel nurses and other things. I was just thinking,
Yeah.
staff or faculty members that just come for a short residency that's 3 months, like having somewhere where they could live at the hospital that would make it easy for them so they don't have to search for a place. That was my thinking.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in that sense.
Sorry.
I don't know that you need like it's probably not gonna be single family dwellings though, so.
Yeah, probably not.
So yeah, I sort of had a lot of circles in those two columns in general, and then the industrial, the I-1 and the I-2. I had, like, most of our industrial areas in the city are not super intense, right? Like, we don't have like an asphalt plant, but, it could be possible.
We have a cement plant.
We have a cement plant. And so I think of, if you're gonna allow it in that zoning, it's possible by right, there could be a cement plant right next to them. Even if there isn't already, so.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, some of it is, sort of more like a normal office park, and some of it in the city is probably going to be rezoned to something non-industrial and redevelop. I don't think that should stay industrial. I think it should rezone if it's gonna become something else. So I have a lot of circles on the industrial just because, again, like the compatibility thing. So thinking about what is allowed and what could be right next door. So a lot of the residential, unfortunately, I don't support an industrial. Other people may have other opinions. But that was a lot of, some of the skilled nursing and some of the medical uses I didn't like in industrial either. And then I just had a couple things on the transect one where I was thinking just of the difficulty sometimes of meeting transect standards and the building frontage requirements and all those things, particularly when you get to like U8, U9, DT. Some of these things, it would be really difficult to have them in the higher transects. I guess, you know, if it's allowed and people can figure out how to meet the transect standards, it's probably okay, but it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to get some of those things to work in the transect zone. So, and I was intrigued that you did expand, well, I guess it's gasoline or alternative fuel stations. That was sort of interesting to me that you added categories for the
Where's that at?
I just thought that was interesting. I mean, it would be by special use permit, but you did it in the transects. That's my general feedback.
Well, I changed some of these from permitted, the gas, to special use. So
Okay,
they're currently,
some of them,
currently they're permitted, and now I am making it special use. And then I
Well,
did add some
they're
special
by
use.
right for 6 pumps, but not for more.
Right,
And nobody wants 6 pumps anymore.
right. I will say that I do know that people that have a single-family home in industrial zone lots right now, currently, I have a friend that has one in the southeast.
He runs an asphalt plant in the backyard.
Yeah, maybe.
You think about all that
I
stuff
don't
where the
know.
ice plant, like all that stuff, like south of Depot, that's industrial. There's houses there.
Yeah,
It's all industrial.
that's all transitional
I
anyway.
just think a lot of that
Yeah.
South Main industrial is not going to be industrial in 10 years.
It's
Like it's going to rezone to something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
So I don't think
tried,
we need to allow those uses in industrial. I think we need to get the industrial changed to something different so that we don't, so that those don't allow the industrial
well,
uses anymore.
right
ultimately.
now, all that South Main stuff is squashed between non-industrial development on both sides.
But long-term, I'd rather that stuff become non-industrial so that those uses aren't allowed there anymore.
Yeah.
Once these things phase out, I think it's a better, rather than allowing like a multifamily building to stay in industrial, I think, you know, we make them change the zoning so the industrial uses won't be allowed in the future in the middle of the city.
Mr. Hill?
That's personal preference.
Well, I just want to say that this is just really cool. Thank you so much for,
Well, we're really cool.
for doing this. It's really ambitious, and for you to bring that forth just on your own merit, I think that's really great. There are some concerns that I have on some of them, like, for example, allowing residential development in the BUS zoning district. It doesn't currently allow density today, so this would create greater implications to the zoning code and allowing density and how much density should be allowed in those specific districts. Unless I'm interpreting how we do things a little differently here. But I believe that would be the case. And staff can correct me if that's not. So that would be a huge change. It's almost like an alternative way to secure more housing in the city, by increasing the number of residential uses allowed in non-residential districts specifically.
My great-grandfather was a butcher in North Adams, Mass, and his whole family lived upstairs.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a not
Right.
uncommon way for people to live. And if you go to Greenville, South Carolina, go down Main Street, the top 3 or 4 stores are all residential.
Yep.
That's why I like Japanese zoning codes more than I like American
Sure.
zoning codes, because you can have a factory next to a house that's next to an apartment building, and people can walk places and go places, whereas we are just like, this is our worst stuff. Rather than regulating the stuff, we
Well,
try to
that
do it
the
this other way.
form-based code somewhat does that.
Right.
Right.
This is much bigger of a change than just the changes to the permitted use table, which of course, I'm sure you know, it's like a whole different way of approaching housing in the city, which I think is a really interesting thing to do, and to approach it as maybe we increase the number of uses that are available in, non-residential districts specifically, because that was the biggest thing that I saw. That being said, in terms of the industrial, I know a lot of cities are trying to hold on to their industrial development. It's really important to their economy. Industrial development is disappearing all over the state, or at least industrial zone properties, and it's hard to rezone something to industrial because of course, the environmental implications and then the compatibility implications of that. So I'm sure the city has a desire to keep a lot of that industrial land. That being said, I'm pretty sure Florida statutes now allow affordable housing in almost all non-residential zoning districts.
I was wondering when
I thought-
you guys were gonna get there,
It
but
was
yes,
commercial-
commercial districts.
Commercial districts. I don't know if it.
But I believe it's in industrial too, is it not?
I think that is still a gray area. It
Okay.
says commercial districts, and our zoning code
do it in
defines
industrial?
commercial districts.
Live local specifically allows industrial, residential and industrial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that's an important element that I'm not, not sure if it's been implemented in the code yet, or at least made clear in the code yet. It's still really new. I mean, that was the past few months. So, I think this is a really interesting approach. I'm definitely open to it. I think it's really great. It's just really ambitious, and thank you for bringing it forward. I have more thoughts, but there's just a lot here.
Mr. Castillo, did you have something to say? And then,
Just really quickly, nothing particular, but if you have any notes pertaining to this, something that you scribbled and you want me to take and consider as I am.
wait, you're supposed to be taking the notes.
Yeah, but if there's additional notes, I will love those.
You made me snort on that one.
Mr.
Yeah.
Middleton?
Yes, I think what would be helpful for staff at this point, first, we would love to look at all this and analyze it and look at it in a serious way, and a professional way, and we have not been able to do that yet. Certainly for this last item here, it is extremely complicated, covers a lot of places. We have multiple, levers that we talk about that we're trying to achieve here as the city. Housing, certainly. And then as Mr. Hill pointed out, that industrial uses and areas are important to the life and growth and development of a city as well. And the city of Gainesville is roughly out of industrial areas currently. So that is certainly something that we have to plan for. Does that mean that the industrial that we have today needs to stay or not? Honestly, we don't know, and would love to look at that as staff and have the reason to look at it and bring something back to you. I would also want to, like Juan was saying, if you guys can give us some more clear parameters or boundaries, that would be extremely helpful to us. Also, if we can temper your expectations for what we come back with, it won't necessarily be, I'm just guessing here because it is so complex, something that says staff thinks you should do 1, 2, 3, 4, but maybe staff comes back with something a little bit more defined and narrowed down and analyzed based off of state statute changes and things like that.
Okay.
If that's your will.
Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. I think that's all we have for the evening. We did, as a result of a dropped, anyway, we have a special meeting on June 8th. And hopefully everybody will be able to attend that. We'll be downstairs in hiding. And any board comments? Mr. Torres?
People probably already know, but I'm resigning. This will be my last meeting. I'm just having difficulty balancing school and plan board commitments and doing my research in an effective way. So this will be my last meeting. I already told Juan about it.
Okay, I guess we're gonna advertise for 2, right? Okay,
I'm sorry
Thank
to
you.
see you go.
Who's the second one dropping? Tina?
we appreciate you.
Jason.
No, Jason.
Oh, Jason.
Hasn't been replaced yet.
Okay, I didn't know he dropped 2.
Well, one of the Jasons.
Jason Hurst.
Oh, Jason Hurst. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're advertising now, right? For,
That's correct, and,
is there any reason we can't say we need 2 spaces? instead of
well, they
just-
already know about.
Okay, good.
But
All
I
right.
think he has to officially submit the letter before
did.
they.
Yes, already.
Oh,
It's
okay.
already at this, I was reading
Okay.
some city meeting
Okay.
minutes. I saw. Did we give direction? Did we have to give direction for this one? What do we have to do?
If there's more clear, direction that you all would like to give, it would be very much appreciated. If not, we will come back with something.
Well, I'll probably just email,
Okay,
if that's all right.
that's probably easier because there's a lot of stuff in here.
There is.
If there's stuff you hate, that's completely understandable.
Yeah, I'm pretty reluctant to say anything about stuff I hate.
Yeah.
Besides me.
I'm clearly not.
Okay, any other board comments?
Yeah, if you'll individually email, Juan,
Yeah.
whatever extra comments or.
Yeah, no violation of sunshine. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? I declare this meeting adjourned.